Welcome to the Poke It podcast with me, Pete Jenkins, and my co-host, Nicola Cairncross. In the show, we'll be getting deeply interested in everything and everyone, including business and entrepreneurship, investing, crypto, great films, books, and sci-fi, served up with great food and wine, and a little bit of gamification, and the odd guest thrown in for good measure. You can join in the conversation anytime at the Poke It podcast private group on Facebook. Now, let's see what we're going to be poking at today, shall we?
Hello, Nicola. Welcome to another week of the Poke It podcast.
Very good. Yeah, what have you been up to this week? I know you've been frantically busy because I've hardly talked to you all week.
I've been trying to squeeze more hours into a 24-hour day. Is that
1 week? We're one. Well, it starts on Monday, doesn't it? Your gamification Europe.
My conference, my 5-day-long conference. Why did I do that? Why?
Yeah, you are mad.
Starts on Monday. I've managed to complete. Sometimes it's so hard to get like final details from your speakers, but the first 2 days are finished, complete, ready to go. And I'm now aware of who's going to fill in the gaps on the other 3 days. I'm just waiting for key bits of information from the last few. I've realized there's something like 56 speakers that I'm liaising with.
Absolutely mental.
Yeah. I've announced 44. So 44 are happy, good, done. Although, literally just before this call, someone just emailed me and said, can I move my slot? I've got a real trouble with attending at that time. And I'm thinking probably no.
Yeah. No, not now. Not the week before.
That's a Monday one as well. So it's only in 3 days' time or 4 days' time or whatever.
And have you been doing little interviews with all of them?
No, so I've stopped doing the interviews. So there's a less point now because I need time to use the interviews in the marketing to generate the ticket sales.
Yeah.
I've got a few left to do, which is just the sponsors, basically.
Okay.
And some of those we've agreed to do during the event and some afterwards, like recap, because obviously the marketing doesn't just stop because the event has. So that's one thing. And then, of course, amongst all that, life continues. Yesterday, I had to spend a couple of hours with a colleague creating exam questions for my students. Spent a couple of hours teaching said students today. I had a really cool kickoff meeting with a new project, which actually a bunch of students, but from a different university who I'm mentoring for the next 12 weeks on a big venture capital research project. I don't think I could say much more about it, but it's in the games industry, hence why I'm involved. And so on and so forth. I can't even remember further back than yesterday right now.
Well, Lisa, who we interviewed, as you recall, on the Narrowboat episode, she says good luck. And that's pretty cool. We're able to show the comments, which is rather nice now.
Yes,
cool. Well, what have I been up to? I have had quite an interesting week, I can tell you that. I've ordered my Christmas lunch from Hello Fresh. I just thought, do you know what? Having it all delivered, all measured out, not having to... I usually spend hundreds of pounds on Christmas lunch. It's crazy.
Really?
Yeah, because I go and buy a turkey, because I want leftovers, you see. Because we all love bubble and squeak and things like that. So I usually just go and buy a big bag of potatoes and a whole turkey. I really do cater for it. Even if there's only 4 of us, I cater for 10. And that does ensure leftovers. But this year we were supposed to be going to my sister's, but I don't think an invitation's forthcoming because she hasn't spoken to me for at least 3 weeks. And so I thought I'm just going to order it anyway. It's really good value. It's £110 for 4 people. And that includes a crown of turkey and a cheese board and puddings and everything. And I just thought, even if we get invited round to my sister's and we end up going there for Christmas Day, we've still got our own Christmas dinner to have. So leftovers sorted. And I just love HelloFresh food. It's so good. It really is.
You're doing well. We should be sponsored by them.
Yes, we should actually. HelloFresh. We could actually, because we can go and get an affiliate link and just put it in the show notes. So let's do that because we both fans, aren't we? We could be sponsored by HelloFresh and Naked Wines.
Perfect. That's a good mix.
Yeah, that is a brand match if ever I've seen one. And then I did. This will make you laugh. I did the referral from your
Oh, yeah,
lovely lady Jess. I did
the online learning.
Yeah,
Yes.
how to create, market and sell profitable training courses, and we talked about it in our last week's show, and that gave me some good stuff, and it was really, really interesting. About 100 people registered, I think, which is quite nice, and loads of people turned up on the day, which is fantastic. But I was just going through I don't do that whole thing of talking about myself for a quarter of an hour or half. Some people do. I literally just tell a little tiny bit of background just to get their attention, and then I say what led me to the discovery of what I've learned that I'm about to teach them. But before I could get to that point, this guy popped up. I didn't realize they were all unmuted. I thought they were all muted, and he popped up, unmuted himself, and said, "Oh, just get on with it. Will you get to the point that I've come to learn?"
How rude!
Oh my God, it was such a shock. It was like I imagine it was like what being a comedian and being heckled's like. It threw me absolutely completely. I just he got savaged in the chat. Obviously, people were telling him how rude he'd been, and actually, he did give him his due. He said he apologized at the end, and he sent me a very gracious written email apology. He said he didn't know what's got into him. He says lockdown's just getting to him. I thought, but it was really freaky for about. I mean, I'm very rarely phased because I know my topic inside out. And I speak a lot. I'm very rarely phased like that. But I was thrown for a loop for a couple of minutes. I really was. Could not get my head back in the game for a minute or two. But it went very well.
You get thrown off course.
Yeah, and it went very well in the end. And everybody, I've had lots and lots of emails. I've had lots of people asking for the backup resources, and I've had a lovely email from Gavin, who was running the thing. So that was a good referral. Thank you very much.
I will pass that message on.
Yes, do, because I think Jess might even have been on the call. I wasn't sure. If so, she was. She would have heard it. So it's been a quiet week for UFOs, but on the conspiracy theory front, which is now rapidly not becoming a conspiracy, I bought myself a new book called Controlled Demolition of the American Empire. From the founding of the Federal Reserve to 9/11 to the coronavirus panic. I think this is going to send me straight to sleep quite quickly every night. But apparently it's a rattling good read. It's by a guy called, hang on a second, Jeff Berwick. And he's the founder of the Dollar Vigilante, which he calls an anarcho-capitalist financial newsletter service. But I really enjoy his videos, even though he has to do the first half on YouTube and take the rest off to BitChute because YouTube would deplatform him. So he's a bit more radical than the kind of stuff I normally listen to. But he's really good fun. He's got a little dog, part Chihuahua, part Terrier, and he lives in Mexico, and he walks around his local golf course with the dog with a selfie stick talking to the camera about what his thoughts are. And I thoroughly enjoy him. So go and check him out on BitChute if you want the whole thing. And what else has happened? Bitcoin, Citibank. You might have missed this because you've been so busy.
I probably have. I've been very, very busy.
Citibank have come out with the most bullish prediction for a Bitcoin price ever today. Citibank's Forex department and the high net worth individual wealth management department have issued a statement that say they expect Bitcoin to go to $318,000 by next Christmas.
What? I'm shocked. I was so busy with the conference as well that all my take profit things were triggered when I wasn't paying attention, and so I missed a chunk of going up.
Oh, screw!
Because it was all sitting in cash.
Oh no, that's a schoolboy error, isn't it? I've just done a video about how to choose your stop losses and how to place them sensibly.
I know I should have had trailing stop losses on, but
trailing stop losses. Yeah, I don't do those. I do them manually. But I've just done a video I've got two friends who are super bright and who are super expert in their field, and they've suddenly decided they've been investing in Bitcoin and gold and silver, but they've suddenly decided they want to trade Bitcoin. I'm trying to cram 3 to 4 years learning into their heads via 5 videos, and they're so impatient as well. They're just
I think that's not quite right, isn't it? Don't you want 12 videos to do your online course.
Absolutely. Oh no, I'm not going to do a course. No, I completely wouldn't do that. That's far too much responsibility for my liking. But yeah, no, I mean it literally. I mean, I had to go and find the this time next year, Rodney, we will be millionaires, because the quote, and I found a little video of it on YouTube as well, because if this goes to 318,000, I will be a millionaire by next Christmas, which is like, exciting. Moving swiftly on and calming down. Yeah. So what's our topic of the day, Pete? Introduce it and set us up.
When to pivot. That was my idea for a topic for today.
All right. Good one.
And I mean, obviously, this is a good year for that sort of thing anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I felt like we could talk about a few examples where we might have pivoted over the years, but also any good ones we've spotted this year as well, because there's so many examples around us.
Yeah.
That I think it's worth looking at. Yeah. But what do we mean?
I'm the pivot queen. I think I generally, on some things I pivot too quickly. And I'm very good at giving up on stuff if it doesn't work straight away. But in more recent years, I've become someone who's clinging on to something longer than perhaps I should be. But I've read all the books about when to pivot. I've read The Dip by Seth Godin, which I was very disappointed with. Everyone quotes it as the best book on this, but I don't think it didn't do anything for me.
I've not read that one, so maybe I won't bother.
Yeah, well, no, really, I thought it was a complete waste of time. Sorry, Seth, I love your stuff normally, but I think the thing that really stuck with me out of all the advice I've been given over the years about whether to pivot is looking at your existing business and asking yourself a few simple questions. Do you have an offer that converts? Are people interested in it when you talk to them about it? Do their eyes light up, or do their shoulders sag? When you're talking about it, do they go, oh, I'd like one of those, or that sounds great, I'd buy that, or, do they show interest? The offer that converts is an interesting yardstick, because it's have you ever sold any of this thing? Are people already buying this thing in one form or another? Can you compete with them doing nothing, which is everyone thinks their competition is other people doing the same thing, but actually the competition is them not doing anything at all. And so that's that. Once I got the offer that converts straight in my head, then it's just a question of, are you getting in front of enough eyeballs? And most businesses that aren't working, I was talking to someone on Facebook last night, and they're an artist, and I reeled off a list of questions. Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? And have you done that? And they hadn't done any of it, so they weren't even getting their art in front of enough eyeballs, let alone finding out whether it was any good and people wanted to buy it. So what sort of, I mean, I'm sure I know you've pivoted a few times. What kind of yardstick measurements do you use?
Oh, I've used a few. The selling one, not so much, because I'm always able to sell stuff if I've got time to talk to people. I feel like I'm quite good at talking people into things.
Yeah, but you can't sell something that someone doesn't want in the first place. I mean, that's a real fallacy about sales, isn't it? You can only sell things that people actually want.
I know, but I think you can convince them to want it. So
no, you can't. No, not fundamentally. So you couldn't sell a chocolate teapot, really, could you? No matter how good a salesman you were.
Okay, but sometimes what you can do is let people know about something that they didn't even think they wanted, and then they realize they want it. So maybe that's what I mean. That's
educating people to a sale, and that is really hard work.
It is, and I always seem to end up in industries doing that, and it's because I'm like adopting new stuff. So my company was one of the first to sell a CRM as a SaaS, software as a service, over broadband, but it was before broadband, so it was on like dial-up and things.
Oh my god!
Yeah, and then similarly, we early adopters on VoIP telecoms.
Yeah,
which it was so unreliable in the early days.
Yeah,
the logic of it was perfect, but it was an education approach, and reliability needed to crop up, which is when we got into broadband sales to support that. That was a good move, because then we had control over it, and suddenly it took off.
Yeah.
And then gamification, well, to be honest, yes, it's about educating people, but I've actually made a lot of money from educating people in it. So it's a slightly different approach for once.
But it's something that immediately intrigues. If you say gamification to people, they're instantly interested.
Yeah, they either disagree or they agree, but there's a conversation that happens.
Yeah, yeah.
For me, I mean, I don't think I've stayed this interested in a subject for this long ever, and I can't see their interest fading. You know, I'm still thinking about what book am I going to write next, and
yeah,
what's the next project I want to work on in this. And there's lots of different things always cropping up where it could be used.
I think
pivot-wise, one of my favorite pivots was pivoting into gamification. It's very true.
Yeah, I remember I was pretty much there when it happened. So yeah, it was great. And you went off and did something really big about it, didn't you? I mean, you signed up for a distance learning course at an American university.
Yeah, so I did an online course because I was interested and I thought it might be the answer. Within 2 weeks, I was hooked.
Really? You know? Wow.
And to be honest, back then, I would never work into the evenings. I was quite precious with my time.
Yeah.
This is the only time I've ever actually looked forward to an evening and working on a course and doing all the work and getting really into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think 4 weeks in, I had an opportunity to present at a Chamber of Commerce event, a big one. So before I even finished learning the subject, I was teaching other people about it.
Yeah. Well, they say that's the best way to learn, isn't it?
It is. But my pivot moment, and this relates to your questions actually that you had, was when I did that talk, watching the people in the audience reaction while I told them what it was and seeing the spotlight and so many eyes was completely the opposite to doing a similar talk about IT, which is what I had been doing.
Or broadband.
Yeah. And I was just like, wow, I want this all the time.
Yeah.
I do not want the dull eyes glazing over.
Yeah.
When I talk about the product that is perfectly practical, feasible, helpful over here, as opposed to one that excites passion over here.
Yeah.
And you know, within 2 months, I'd sold my most of my last business to make space for gamification in my life.
Yeah.
And that was a fast pivot as well. And really risky. You know, I sold the business where I knew exactly how to make the sale. You know, I'd got it down to a T. I just had to have it.
The processes.
Yeah. It was an easy sell as well, selling a telecom system. I've not much margin in it, but such an easy sell. Then, you know, it's a nice business to be in some respects. And that's the one I got rid of because it was easiest to sell the business as well.
I mean, I've pivoted so many times I couldn't. If I had a quid for every time I've pivoted, I'd be a rich woman. But that was generally because I couldn't make. That was because I had to make the leap from, you know, the rich dad poor dad cash flow quadrant, where it's freelancer, business owner. No, it's not. It's employee, freelancer, business owner, investor. And I was trying to make the leap from employee to freelancer, successful freelancer, and I struggled with that because I couldn't then make the leap from freelancer to business owner. I nearly did it when I was making waistcoats in the new romantic era. I had my sisters sewing waistcoats for me, and we had a little production line going in the bedroom. But what I should really have been doing was for local ladies to piecemeal it out to. That's piecework, you know that. And they would have probably actually. I think my sisters were free now. I think about it. So I think they were just helping me because I was selling them to a designer shop in Brighton. It was very funny.
Oh, I mean, that's good business if you can do it. Slave labor.
Well, it was, yeah, slave. And better than that, I was buying old curtains in junk shops to make them out of. So I then sold them for a very seriously good markup, and then they doubled it again and sold it on to the customers. But they were beautiful. They were waistcoats that went right up at the back, and they were really slim fitting. For ladies and men, they were slim fitting and brocade and silk and mother of pearl buttons that I got from junk shops as well. Mm-hmm. And then the fronts were very ornate. They went down to the knees and crossed over. So they were single-breasted and double-breasted waistcoats. They were just stunning. If you could imagine, Spandau Ballet would have worn them. So
yeah, okay. I can see you still got the passion for that business as well. You know?
Well, I absolutely have. I mean, and then stumbling on the thing of buying them in the junk shops and curtains and turning them into waistcoats. Talk about adding value. And I learned how to bag out a waistcoat. That was the trick to it. You sewing the lining in is very easy once you know how to bag it out properly. But I couldn't make enough money from that to live on sustainably. So that's always been my issue, is starting businesses that I'm passionate about that didn't make enough money, and then not being interested enough in the stuff that did make money. Like I should have been an estate agent really, because I'd have been a brilliant one. But I couldn't get past the fact that you had to start as an estate agent about 6,000 a year, and then the rest of it came from commission, because I didn't trust that I would be able to make the commission. And then I got into all sorts of weird and wonderful businesses, from a record label to, and it was really only when I found coaching that I really discovered something you could do, work with lots of different industries, never get bored, because you're working with people and every single person is unique and different. But the actual tactics of being a coach and the tactics of marketing coaching, I found fascinating. And it changed my life so much. So I was able to speak from a place of authenticity. So then it was just a question of finding my niche, which I actually did very, very quickly, because I was fascinated about how money works.
Yeah.
And I went on a mission to read all the best self-development, personal development books about money. And then I was just started sharing them. So that sort of grew incredibly fast by people sharing it, because I had an offer that converted, basically, because people wanted to know how money worked themselves, because we're not taught it at school. And it grew into a coaching program. It grew into weekend retreats. It grew into workshops. It grew into a book. And that was all brilliant till it stopped, till the last credit crunch. And I really struggled after that, as you know, because you were there, to find. I had to pivot big time then, and I tried. Yeah, I tried to pivot into digital marketing consultancy, but because my confidence was so shot, I just couldn't get it going for ages, could I? It took a couple of years at least.
Yes, you had to completely rebuild your confidence levels, which that's consulting, isn't it?
It's not
so much sometimes about the skill; it's about the confidence with which you put across your ideas.
Yeah.
Which sometimes gives some consultants a bad name.
Yeah, it does. And it wasn't really until I had some amazing client successes that I then started to feel more confident in what I was teaching. But again, I didn't really have an offer that converted, because I was doing it via a membership site system, which everyone said was the best way, and it is really. But what I didn't realize was people don't buy memberships, they buy products, and then they stay for the community, as we talked about the other week.
We did, yeah. So do it in the right order.
Yeah, which is all about getting the offer right.
Yeah.
Again.
So you're saying with that particular pivot, you didn't really have a choice. You had to pivot because of the credit.
I had to pivot to something, yeah. But I went to talk to my mentor and I said, well, what do I do next? And he said, because he had to pivot too, because he was in property investing, for God's sake, which was a nightmare. He had 18 mortgages that had previously been approved, refused in one day. That was the fastest pivot he had to make in his life. And then he was made bankrupt due to circumstances beyond his control. But he had to pivot. He didn't know what he was going to do next. He still had property, but his family still had property, but he didn't. And but he was a young man. He had to change his thing completely. And I said to him one day, we're in the car going to London. We're going to see a friend of ours, and I said, you think differently to anyone else I've ever met. Why don't you write another book? Because he'd written a book about property. And I said, why don't you write a book about mindset? Because your mindset's completely different to anyone else I know. And that's what he did. He wrote two big fat books in the space of the next 6 months. So he pivoted completely from property investing to personal development. He's sold books in 150 countries. He's does 5-day retreats. He's got people throwing money at him to coach him. He just won't do it. So, you can pivot to something where there's an offer that converts, but it doesn't suit your lifestyle. So that's a really important thing to think about when you're pivoting. I think actually that's the first thing you should think about.
Your lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, that's the pivot I'm going through at the moment. Because I've spent years running a business, growing it by employing more people, and just throwing money at that.
Breakfast networking. How much breakfast networking did you do?
Do you want it in weight?
How many
sausages?
How many full English have you eaten in your life?
God, some of those weekly breakfast meetings as well.
Yeah.
I'm at 6,000 sausages and counting.
But Pete, would you have pivoted if you hadn't been forced into it?
Now, here's the funny thing. I was actually planning to pivot this year because I'd realized I'd reached capacity for myself.
Yes.
I mean, as much as I thoroughly enjoy jumping on a plane, flying abroad, delivering 2 or 3 2-day workshops somewhere exotic.
Yeah.
The sheer amount of travel time, the prep, dealing with the jet lag. There's only so many of those you can fit in. So I'd already reached the point of realizing that although I could live perfectly well myself off that money, it didn't really work for scaling the team. And I did try it one year. I trained someone up, and they were delivering workshops as well, and that looked like a good approach. And then, to be honest, they burnt out from the travel within 3 months.
Really? Wow.
Can't handle it.
Yeah. The youth of today.
The youth of today couldn't handle that. And finding someone who would deliver training as well as me. In fact, sometimes he got better results than I did.
Yeah.
That's what the dream, isn't it? Is to have an employee who's actually even better than you.
Yeah.
Going through that again, because that took me 3 years to get him to that point. I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to pivot. I figured it would be to deliver online because I work internationally. So it would have to be something like that.
Yeah.
So I was going to work at it this year, but, I'm quite a good procrastinator. So I don't think I was fully convinced I'd have it ready by the end of the year. So in some respects, COVID was a bit of a blessing in terms of forcing me to pivot fast.
Yeah.
And
you have done. I mean, I've watched it. It's been astonishing. You had you had quite a lot of techie skills, which I think definitely helped.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I was already using all the relevant platforms because I was trying to run my business from anywhere in the world anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. But getting clients to use them was the next bit, wasn't it? But once everyone was using Zoom and Teams, much easier.
Yes. And that's been absolutely godsend, hasn't it? The fact that clients have been forced to use stuff like that. I mean, and my client Roger, he never had a Zoom meeting before in his life, and now he's interviewing famous people, who also wouldn't have had a clue about using Zoom before now. There's Louis Theroux. He completely pivoted to a podcast, didn't he, from his television show? In fact, he did another television show where he looked back over the best of his television shows, which was very, very clever.
That's a good one. I mean, actually, it has opened some other opportunities as well. I'd never said yes to recording a podcast, and I've been asked a few times because I could never commit to being able to do it every week. Sometimes I might be traveling for 2 weeks, and I'll be in the middle of delivering a workshop at the podcast recording time.
Yes. Yeah.
So there are some elements to running your own business that make it quite difficult.
Yeah.
If you're doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, you can be quite flexible with podcast recording, though. It's as long as your podcast recording partner is flexible, then you can do that.
Yeah, but it's not easy, is it? Because I mean, sometimes I might be out of the country for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
In an 8-hour different time zone.
Yeah.
And although we might have an hour slot where it would work, I might be completely jet lagged and not make any sense whatsoever. I've used it all in the workshop.
I've recorded a podcast from Las Vegas once, and I was quite jet lagged, and the hotel internet wasn't all that either. So
that's the other thing. You can't rely on, because you don't know it. You can't rely necessarily on all the connectivity or the devices or something happening. But now I regularly record podcasts with you every week.
Yeah.
I do a monthly event at a fairly consistent time. And I'm starting this a gamification and health podcast with a client. We're recording the first few sessions at the moment to have some in the bag, launch in January probably.
Excellent.
Yeah. And that's nice and specific. That's a topic as well. So I quite like that.
Yeah.
And these are all things I couldn't commit to before, not easily. So.
Because of the traveling.
Yeah. And also managing the team. That takes time. So the main pivot I'm doing is going digital, but also not having full-time employees.
Yes.
Doing it through freelancers and automation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because I always knew, no matter what I was seeking to do, that I wanted to have the lifestyle where I could travel where I wanted. I mean, it seemed like a big dream, and off in the future, but actually, it happened quicker than I thought. And also, I never wanted to be hooked up to a machine. I never wanted the horror of a laptop breaking or losing, power or getting corrupted. So I've always stored everything in the cloud. it astonishes me still that when people say, "Oh," in fact, my one of my friends said it this morning. He said, "Oh, I'm not on the right computer for that." And I thought, what does that even mean? Everything's.
Actually, I have that issue sometimes, just because I'm on, because I've got teaching at certain they're on different networks, and sometimes they're just not compatible. But I have actually, because I've been sitting at home, I've been able to work out all those differences now. But some of them were hard. But now I've got a sequence I can run through to attack a particular network and make it work.
Yeah, cool. So do you think you'll ever pivot again, or do you think this is it now for the rest of your working natural?
No, I think pivots happen, don't they? The market changes, the subject might change. You're just always learning what works for you, aren't you? So
do you think there's a difference between pivoting and evolving?
Yes, I'm going to say yes. Evolving is knowing more about yourself and evolving your skills and so on. Pivoting is about where you put your attentions, isn't it? More than anything else. Ooh. It's about and letting the world know as well that you're doing something different.
Oh yeah, it's nothing worse than having to go and change your profile on LinkedIn again.
Yeah, I mean, I've got tips for this because I've been a member of the Chamber of Commerce locally for 20 years. I mean, when I moved into gamification, I spent 13 years building a brand, going to all these networking meetings, and suddenly I had a company with a different name.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, what? I don't want to waste all that effort. And actually, turns out there's some really easy approaches. Apart from the usual newsletters, I just went and sponsored some events, and everyone who would traditionally see me at networking went, "Oh, that's you now. Okay,
job done.
Job done." And a bit more profile at the same time.
Yeah. And what kind of, just out of interest, I mean, obviously don't tell me in specific, but to sponsor an event like that at your local chamber, what kind of pricing are we looking at? Brighton's a big one too, isn't it? So it's probably one of the more expensive ones.
Well, so Brighton, I mean, I sponsored events at Brighton and Worthing and aided Chamber of Commerce and the Hove Business Association a while back.
Okay. Are we talking hundreds or thousands?
So, well, my secret was in all those cases, they weren't really being sponsored, having any events sponsored at the time.
Ah.
So I said to them, hey, why don't I sponsor some events for free or negligible cost? And then what will happen is other companies will then want to sponsor from then on.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think with the Worthing Chamber of Commerce, the first events I sponsored cost me nothing in terms of sponsorship, but I spent about 50 quid each time on goodies and giveaways and prizes for people attending.
Giveaways and prizes, right?
Yeah. It was similar for the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
And the Hove Business Association one, I think I had to pay for some drinks or something.
Oh, that's easy.
I sponsored an event that was games related, so it was a good fit.
Yeah.
But so, for instance, for the chamber, both chambers, I sponsored like a sequence of 3 months. So, like all the breakfast meetings for 3 months.
Yeah.
And guess what? They ended up selling that as packages, quarterly sponsorship of the breakfast meetings.
Yeah, nice.
I mean, some of the bigger chamber events now are in the thousands, and some of the smaller ones are in the hundreds. But
this is about being resourceful, isn't it? And being creative and thinking about win-win situations.
Yeah. So all of those were win-wins. Win-win for me, win-win for them because they hadn't got around to it. And actually, as soon as people see it's possible, they then want to be the sponsor too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's brilliant. Because I mean, I thought about a pivot just before COVID hit because I was getting a bit fed up with trying to, I didn't really know about shadow banning and things like that then. So I thought I was just rubbish. And it was, it started to affect my confidence again because, I was riding high over a couple of years ago with my, and then Facebook decided they didn't like my Be Everywhere Online slogan. And then they banned my website and they shut my ad account. And it was fighting an uphill battle for a little while. So that was making me think, oh, perhaps I should pivot, and I did think about becoming a scriptwriter, and I actually did quite a lot of training on that, as you know, and I'm still thinking about it because I was just about to go on a course, 2-week intensive course in Beaconsfield, I think it is, and literally just as COVID was hitting, and they postponed the course. I've still got my deposit in, but and I'll probably go on it for fun now, but it involves staying for 2 weeks down in Beaconsfield, which is near Reading somewhere. And you stay in a bit, be at a local B&B, and there aren't any Airbnbs locally, so it sort of tells you what kind of a place it is.
Yeah. But it's basically a retreat, is it?
Yeah, well, and it's taught by a very, very successful screenwriter who writes for ITV, BBC, and Channel 4. So he really knows his stuff. And I thought, oh, that sounds really interesting and really good fun. And if I came out, I've actually written about 4 scripts already. So I've entered things like the BBC Writers' Room and stuff like that. And I thought, wow, that would be a complete lifestyle change at my age. Would be actually quite fun. But I've realised subsequently I don't have to give up everything else to do that. I can still run, my Clicks and Leads Academy alongside that, even if I do start to become, a more serious screenwriter. And then I've still got the book to finish, the sci-fi book. So there's a couple of pivots in me yet, I think.
I've got a pivot to go, which is, I guess it would be to focus in on less businesses at once.
Well, that can you pivot and focus at the same time? I don't know if that's physically possible.
So for me, like the pivot would be to take on less roles.
Yeah.
And it's a tough one because everything's so interesting.
I know. It is. I'm just interested by everything as well. It is a challenge. So, is there any way that you could put it? If Pete Jenkins is the spike of the umbrella, and then everything else is under that, is there any? And then you have different managing directors reporting to you.
Well, I mean, that's what I've always wanted to do, but you have to reach a certain scale on each part of the business to get there.
Yeah.
Which means you need to put a lot of focus on that one part of the business to get to that scale.
Yes.
Yeah, which means the others fall by the wayside. So right now, for instance, normally at this time of year, I would have my gamification awards happening and my conference happening.
At the same time?
Yeah, pretty much the same time, because they were originally created at the same time, one to sell the other.
And I suppose you give out the awards at the conference, don't you?
We did the first couple of years, but then I split it off and made it global, and there's some other changes. Right. But this year, because I've got less staff, I reached capacity really fast. So the awards aren't happening at all.
Yeah.
At the moment, I've had to let them go into like a holding pattern, shall we say?
Limbo.
Yeah, limbo. Limbo is a good word for
it. Limbo land.
Yeah. But because of that, completely focused on the conference, that's going amazingly well.
Yes.
Yeah, better than normal.
So perhaps you have to be a serial focuser. As opposed to giving things up, you could just stagger them throughout the year. I mean, how many things would you like to have throughout the year? 4 things, 1 a quarter?
Well, see, that's an interesting thing that I'm thinking about. Also, with this online world of events, why does it have to be once a year? So I'm interested in taking the conference and adding follow-up events in between. Like, so you have one major event.
Okay.
And then some more focused bits. So say, for instance, next week we end up with, 50 speakers on different topics, and 5 of them really resonate with the audience. Yes. Why not take each of those 5 and do a more focused day or half day or something around?
Or even 2 days.
Whatever it might be.
Yeah, 1 day. Take it back to 1 day.
Right now, like an hour.
Yeah. Oh my God! Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes, and that would keep it alive. And the other thing it does is it would make it easier to have some sort of evergreen marketing running. And evergreen
I've now got as well, because I've got so much content from the previously recorded talks, and an automation system passing out clips of each talk every 3 weeks for like the next 3 or 4 years. I've got it set up now.
Good.
Then I've got the content sorted for 4 years. Okay.
Wow, and that's
constantly getting topped up with new talks. You know?
And that's amazing. Because what I do with this podcast now is every time we release a new episode on a Friday, I swap the Facebook ad content. So I'm running the same campaign, the same optimized for video views, and the same ad group. So it's going out to the same people, but I just swap out the content, which post I'm promoting. Each post gets its own week in the sun, if you like. Yeah. And then that then will show me which topics are most popular, because the ones that get the most shares and comments and likes will be the most popular ones. But it's also building an audience of people who've watched the video 10, 25, 50%. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing you can do with your content schedule, is just, Well,
the other thing is, the ones that are most interesting, there's always room to go deeper. We could revisit a topic, go into a particular aspect of it. The same goes with conference talks. You know, I might have a pretty generic talk about, I don't know, ways to tell story in gamification. And if it resonates, there's a whole day of potential subtopics, you know? So
yeah. Well, you could do a day a month. You could do a day a month, really, couldn't you?
Right now, that's giving me a grey hair thinking about it.
Your brain is saying no. Your heart is running in the opposite direction.
But the principle is there. In fact, I'm already there doing an event every month with the other hat, which is interviewing these gamification authors
of course
books. So I can see I can keep that tempo up. And then I'm thinking I've got this other audience, which is a slightly different audience from the conference, who would want slightly different things, but it wouldn't be too painful to add follow-on events.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So are there 12 books on gamification being released a year?
I'm going to say easily. Yeah.
Really? Wow. And of course there was a backlog, wasn't there? Before you started interviewing people, there were books.
Oh, yeah. So I mean, at the moment, it's quite good because I can be quite picky. But you know, even my old employee and student, Vasilis, he released his book on gamification and learning last week.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Good for him. Good for you, Vasilis. Yeah. That's great news.
So I'll definitely. I mean, I had a little bit of. I was involved in the first versions of it, but I'll definitely read it and interview him about that.
Yeah. It's a fantastic networking thing to do, isn't it? Interviewing people and talking to people and being interviewed by people, which reminds me, I must hook you up with Roger.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So no pivots from you for a long time in the topic, but perhaps pivoting to becoming more focused.
Yeah. I mean, I did a big pivot, which was to be a speaker on the subject, actually, as a business model. Because originally I was just, because I came out of it from a software background, I was just looking at gamification platforms that would answer business needs, as opposed to being a trainer on these things.
Yeah.
So a pivot was a lifestyle pivot, which was I wanted to go abroad more through the business. Yeah. And then that turned into quite a successful part of the business. So then I had to actually pivot part of the business to make space for it.
Yeah. Because you started out as a marketing exercise, and then it became a revenue stream in its own right, didn't it?
Correct. Yeah. In fact, by the end of the second year of speaking abroad, it was half to 2/3 of the income was from workshops and speaking engagements compared to the software.
It's really weird, isn't it? Because I, speaking, I've been paid expenses before, but I've never been paid a speaking fee yet. But I have sold from the stage and created half a year's income in 1 hour, 45 minutes, which was quite incredible. I sold 60 one-year memberships just by making an offer at the end of, literally a really laid back offer as well. It wasn't one of those, and it's worth 60,000, count it down to, today, Rodney, you can have it for £1,495. But no, so I really enjoyed that. But the thing I haven't pursued that more is, but you could go and speak at any conference if you're willing to pay half of your takings to the conference organizer, and you've got a track record of selling from the stage. But I just didn't really want that to be. That felt like high pressure to me. Again, that's a lifestyle choice, isn't it? I didn't want.
I mean, even my way, there's a different sort of pressure, which is like if you're being paid $5,000 to go and do a talk, then there's a lot of expectation on the quality of the talk, what the audience is going to think about it, the visuals, the crafting of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I quite enjoyed that because it's about as creative as I've been given a chance to get up until that point in my career. There's not a huge amount of creativity needed in selling telecoms.
Perhaps not.
That sort of thing.
Cool.
So have you seen any good examples of pivoting this year?
Well, I mean, you are one. Roger, my client, is another one.
And Lisa, listening, pivoting to go and work on a narrowboat. I think that's a good example.
Well, so not only that, but they're now going off grid. So they're moving out of the marina and going and parking in the wilderness and going completely off grid, relying on solar power and a generator and getting all their boat as efficient as possible to live off grid, which I think is just fantastic. And that's a huge pivot in itself, isn't it? Detaching yourself from the water and the mains.
Yeah. Do you know what? My dream when I was in in my late 20s when I was starting to run a business was that I would get a boat, run the business from the boat, and just keep sailing around all the islands in the Med.
Oh, sounds great, doesn't it?
Yeah. So to facilitate that, I got into selling satellite broadband in the early days, but it was not cost effective for most people. It was a hard sell. But now you've got like Starlink from Musk.
Yes.
That's going to be. This is looking much more possible now.
It's only about £100 a month for satellite broadband.
Yeah, and like 500 or 600 quid or something for kit.
Yeah. One of my friends is actively pursuing it at the moment. He's making himself as anti-fragile as possible. So he's he's doing all of that stuff. He's quite a lot of people I know are prepping quite seriously at the moment, and satellite broadband is part of it. So I mean, that's a pivot, isn't it? It's a pivot to being more independent of the state. Yeah,
that's definitely it. So you're pivoting your approach to life, isn't it?
Yeah. And there's another friend of mine. Gotta laugh. I hope he's not listening. He's very busy because he couldn't grow his own vegetables because he lives near a wood and there's a big squirrel problem. So he's spent quite a lot of lockdown building a squirrel-proof allotment in the back end of his garden.
I'm convinced this is a euphemism. He's building a bunker. Yeah.
No, the chicken wire wouldn't stop the nuclear fallout, but it will hopefully stop the squirrels. But it's funny how people's attention. I mean, I've spent a lot of the time during lockdown watching a guy called My Self-Reliance on YouTube, and he's a really softly spoken Canadian guy who's completely built from the ground upwards, a log cabin in the woods, and all sorts of accessory buildings around him, and he's done it all with him and just his dog, a golden retriever called Callie. I absolutely love watching him work, and it's really weird because I don't want to go and live in the woods, I really don't, but I wanted to be prepared in case I had to at some point. So I was ready for a lifestyle pivot like that. I would know exactly what to grab if I had to go to a camping shop in a hurry, put it that way.
Okay, I think that's probably quite useful anyway, especially with like holidays at the moment. It's difficult. We're all having to pivot on what makes a good holiday as well. Yes,
and I'm a Celebrity Get Me Out of Here has had to pivot from being in the jungles of Australia to being in the wilds of Wales, hasn't it, in the winter?
Yeah, get me out of there.
Yeah, really. Cool. Okay, so that's a good pivot discussion, I think. Is there anything we've missed?
Yeah, I was thinking about like local or businesses that you use that have pivoted. What's a good example? Where would you say people might have got it?
Well, I've got to give a Kenny Tutt, a pitch restaurant in Worthing, where we were going to go for our Christmas lunch. We still will if he's allowed to open. He won MasterChef, didn't he? MasterChef, not the professionals. He wasn't a professional. He was a bank manager. And then he got investment, obviously, because they all do if they win. And he then opened a fabulous restaurant in Worthing in, is it Warwick Street? Yeah, Warwick Street, isn't it? And it was just getting rave reviews and doing really well. And then COVID hit. And he has had to pivot. He pivoted straight away to takeaway meals delivered. So top end dinners delivered to people, and he's also got a little van on the go, hasn't he, where he goes out. Yes, he has. He goes to Worthing Seafront, Goring Seafront, Ferring Seafront, all sorts of places. If you follow him on Instagram, you can see where Kenny Tutt's van is, the pitch restaurant van, and they must be doing things like up top market burgers and all sorts of delicious things. I've got to go and find him at some point. But that's a really big pivot he pivoted from being a bank manager to being a restaurateur and chef. Yeah. And then he pivoted from being someone who had a restaurant where he could welcome people to taking it out into the community. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it is good. We've got another mutual friend, actually, who I think is a good example of a pivot. This is Peter. And
Peter Wood, yes.
Because just before COVID, he opened a deli.
He opened a deli on Shoreham Beach, absolutely.
Yeah, which it was an interesting, risky place to put it, I think, because there was no proven demand.
Yeah. In a parade of shops that they'd all sort of slowly closed, but I think they were having a bit of a renaissance. But I think he really, from what I recall, he wanted the shop so he'd have because he does a lot of outside catering, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And I think he wanted the catering facilities without having to drive up to his unit up the AE23 somewhere. So he sort of took it on as a sort of a really solid business decision to make his life easier and give him somewhere to work. And then I think he thought, open it as a deli as well. And then literally just as he did that, COVID hit. And you're right, he's absolutely pivoted to home deliveries, hasn't he?
He has, but his marketing, I feel like his marketing's been really strong through the whole period.
His marketing's always been good.
It is good. It's also, it resonated, I thought, really well with people. Right from the start, it was much more helpful.
He's a really well thought of member of the community, isn't he? He goes out and he works with homeless people. He's a stand-up comedian, so he's just really well. He's always around in the local bars. He's always got a good word and a chat for everyone. He's just a very sociable character, and I think people want to support him. So that helps enormously, doesn't it? Yeah,
and he's not short of of a bit of confidence as well. He'd be like, come along, try the Scotch egg. These are the best Scotch eggs.
I'm going to say his Scotch eggs are pretty spectacular.
And I've tried a few around the place in some posh restaurants as well, and I would say they are the best. They're consistently amazing. I was like, wow, fantastic. Yeah.
If you search on YouTube, Peter Wood Beach Deli Shoreham, you'll see some of my daughter's promotional videos she's made for him.
Oh, she did this. Yeah.
She went and filmed him cooking. Yeah, no, that's a very good one. Yeah,
and I also feel like he's one of the first local businesses that really has taken Uber Eats and things like that and other approaches to being able to deliver.
Yeah, and made it local. Absolutely. I'm racking my brains to think of who else. I mean, well, it's made me use delivery services a lot more. I know they were available before, but just the thought of having to go to a shop now is just. I know some people enjoy it, don't they? But I've never enjoyed it, shopping. But some people use it like a day out, don't they? To go up to Tesco's and McDonald's and Marks and Spencer's.
Always amazes me how full the car parks are there, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's
a lot of people pivoting their whole buying and interacting with shops at the moment, isn't there?
Yes. Yeah.
And how we do that differently is quite interesting.
There's an artist I know called, hang on, the name will come to me. She's got a podcast called Art Juice, and it's Alice Sheridan. Mm-hmm. And she is, a typical fine artist, absolutely beautiful work, paints a lot of wonderful pictures. And she's completely pivoted how she sells, artwork selling in galleries is such an outdated, because you're really captive audience, the people who walk past the gallery.
Yeah.
And she's actually taken her and her other artist friend creating this podcast. They're really educating artists about all the different ways to pivot and sell their art. And I recommended someone to her the other day, this woman I was talking about who didn't have a clue about how to market herself. And one of Phoebe's friends does a really nice job as well. She went to art college and she's got a fabulous eye and she makes beautiful paintings and then she turns them into prints and sells them on Etsy. So that's a really nice way to get your stuff out there.
There's some really interesting projects. But what about any that have got it wrong, do you think? I mean, this is a tricky one because I don't really want to name names, but I feel like there's quite a few coffee shops nearby, some of which I felt didn't handle COVID very well. And
they turned into mini Hitlers, is what you're saying?
Maybe.
Yes. I'm not naming any names, but they're all in East Street.
But some did it really well, and I've completely changed allegiances just from how people looked after everyone, not just me, but everyone in the community.
When you say looked after, do you mean kept them safe or do you mean kept being friendly as opposed to turning into Hitlers?
A bit of both, but also like some people took a chance on how they would stay open and how they would support people. Other people just went, I've no idea, I give up,
Yes, that's very true. Yeah.
And my allegiances go to people who try.
Yeah, and who try with good grace as well, who don't make you feel like you're there doing you a favour.
Yeah.
There's nothing that winds me up faster. I mean, we've got to give a special mention to the lady in what's that place that we go to that I always get confused? It's a tap house.
Oh yeah.
And that young woman in there needs a medal. She really does. She repeats the most exhaustive list of information and instructions in the most upbeat, smiling fashion I have ever seen, and she must be doing it 1,000 times a day. So she, I would carry on going there just because of her sheer force of will.
Yeah. And that's a good reason, I think, to support a business locally. So, I mean, my shopping habits have changed weirdly in that I really, before COVID, mostly just shopped online.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
okay.
Because it was really convenient and I was often away, so stuff could arrive while I was traveling. I didn't really worry about it. Leave it in the porch, that's fine. That sort of thing. But now I'm much happier to support a local business, and I'll go out of my way a bit more. Yeah. Also, partly to get a bit of extra exercise and get out of the house.
Yeah,
True.
That's good.
But I'm much more mindful, I guess, of who I'm supporting with my money. And which will seem odd to my girlfriend because she'll be like, but you just like live on Amazon. But it's not. Not the only place I buy from.
Well, I've just thought of another person who's pivoted well, Phoebe's personal trainer. He started doing Zoom personal PT meetings. So you could either join a group or you could get one-to-one PT sessions via Zoom. And you just have to prop your computer up somewhere where he can see you doing the exercises and he walks you through it. So that's got to be good, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I like that. It sounds quite easy if you're just walking through it as well. So.
Well, I don't know about walking through it, but... And the other one is Nelson's hairdresser comes and cuts his hair on the roof. So the hairdresser, instead of you going to the hairdresser, he comes to you, but he does it outside.
Yeah, I'm intrigued now whether there's gently hair blowing over your neighbours.
Yeah, there is. If you walk down Shoreham High Street and when Nelson's haircut, you think, what on earth is going on? Where's that coming from?
It's raining hair. I like this. Outdoor hairdressing. Why is this not a thing? Why do we not have more outdoor hairdressing?
Nelson's fine neck hair drifting in a mist over Shoreham High Street.
We need warnings when this is happening, so I'm not walking along the high street.
We need to put it on the new shoreham-by-sea Facebook group. Don't come past now.
It can be sponsored by local businesses, not to do it during the busy times.
Oh my God. Well, that's just a brilliant point to round it up, really, because I think I'm losing the plot now. What have you got to look forward to this week?
Me? Gosh. The bit I'm excited about at the moment, apart from filling in the last few gaps in my conference schedule, which should just happen, is actually building the conference platform and doing some interesting things with it. I've got some custom designs from my designer, which I uploaded yesterday. So so it's a bit branded, but a nice little layout and feel. I'm going to be having it as like a couple of events running at the same time, so that people can go off to like a chill out area.
You're nothing if not ambitious, are you really?
Yeah. And yesterday I worked out how to embed a soundtrack in one of the zones. So every time someone enters the lounge area, a YouTube soundtrack will kick off with some game-based music.
Okay.
And they can have that. So everyone's experiencing more of a loungy feel.
Oh, nice.
And actually, I just did a deal. I think it was yesterday. It's been a long time. But I'm going to have an conference after party now, which is basically an online board game, but scalable up to like 500 people.
Wow.
So we'll
see. Normally, I'd be begging for an invite, but I'm absolutely terrified that I would turn up and not have a clue what to do.
Actually, I mean, I played this last week, so I know how it works. It's really simple, and they explain it in about 5 minutes, and then 4 or 5 of you go off into like Zoom breakout rooms and play a board game together. But it's actually more like one of the party games where you answer interesting questions and you learn more about each other while going around a board and doing some other stuff.
Oh, okay, that sounds fun. Are you actually presenting?
It's called Cozy Juicy Real is the game.
Ooh,
and I've not even told my conference attendees yet this is happening. So you heard it here first.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So are you presenting at all?
I'm not supposed to be. There's a chance I'll appear on one of my panel sessions.
Okay.
And I might chair the community day because I'm quite interested in that, and I forgot to get anyone to chair it. So,
well, if there's anything you think I'd like, or not be too out of my depth on, I'd love to just pop in for a little while, just to see what it's all about.
That's the deal. I mean, you can have the Poke It ticket. In fact, hey, can we have a competition? Any Poke It listeners?
Yeah.
Send me a good reason, I'll send you a ticket.
Send Pete, and where would they send that to, Pete? Email you at?
Email me, anywhere, basically. Just send me a message. But pete.jenkins@gamificationplus.uk is guaranteed to get to me.
Okay. And that's if they're listening now, obviously, because next Friday, when this goes out officially, then it'll be over. But
it will be too late at that point.
Well, is there going to be any kind of recorded version available afterwards?
Yeah, so we record every talk. As long as I remember to hit the record button.
No, can you not set that up so it does it by default? That sounds like
no, you cannot.
My God, the pressure!
It does pop up, right? Every time you start a session, it says, "Do you want to record this?"
Oh my God!
Right, but I've got to make sure someone hits that. Definitely.
Someone.
Well, because I've got a chair of each day, as well as me sitting behind the scenes. So if the chair just goes ignore, I'll be like, no.
Because I recorded this presentation I did for Gavin the other day because as a backup, and I somehow managed to hit the button that recorded just their end and not mine.
Oh, whoa.
I know. So I got all the comments and the interruption, but I didn't get my actual presentation, although I did get the visuals. It was tragic. Put a big post-it note on your thing. Have you hit the record button?
Oh, no, so the software recently had an upgrade for the conference, and it has a run of show ability. So I'm putting a bunch of notes in, so you can say, right now I need to do this. I can click a button to share an announcement with everyone. So I can pre-plan quite a lot of it.
Okay.
Which is one of the things I've got to do by next Monday, obviously.
By next Monday. Not much weekend for you then. You got anything, what's the word? Recreational planned?
No, just arguing about how much I'm going to be working.
Oh, okay.
A recreational argument. How about that?
A recreational argument. I don't think I've got anything planned at all at the moment.
How's your 5-day challenge?
Well, funny you should mention that. It was quite it's a bit of a disappointment because I paid, as you know, for advertising this time, and I got my leads were coming in at about £10 a pop because it didn't really have time to, anyway, there's a glitch, and by the time I sorted out the glitch, it didn't really have time to do the machine learning, which would have brought cheaper prospects in. But I did manage to get over 100 prospects, about 120 registered by email, which is great, but then only about 50% of them registered for the bot messenger reminders. And when it came down to it, only about 34 actually went into the group, which I don't really understand why there was such a big fall off. But it was the first time I'd done it with paid traffic as well as organic traffic. But there's 34 active people in there at the moment. The first bot didn't fire, so I had to send it manually, but everything else has gone seamlessly. And there's about 5 to 6 people engaging actively.
Oh, that's good.
Although they don't seem to have any questions. I can see they're engaging because they're engaging in the introduce yourself and the questions after the task post and videos go in, but then they're not putting any further questions on the ask me anything questions, which is where I would be doing the live to answer them. So it's a little bit quieter than I'd like, but I think the people who are doing it are getting good value out of it, and fingers crossed that one or two of them might decide to join me in my academy afterwards. But if not, it's just an ongoing process of getting better each time I do it.
Yeah. So you iterate it next time.
Absolutely. January the 18th is my next one. So yeah, I've got it planned already, which is quite far ahead for me. I don't normally plan things that far in advance. Good stuff. I think that's us done then, isn't it?
I think so. Until next time. Until
next week. Now, are you going to be able to do this in the middle of next week?
Oh, I thought we'd have a chat about this afterwards.
Oh, okay, right. I'll hit the finish button, and thank you very much for everyone who's watching us live. You're listening to the Poke It podcast with Pete Jenkins and Nicola Cairncross. You can find Pete at gamificationplus.uk, and you can find Nicola at clicksandleads.com. And do come and join our private Facebook group. Just search Poke It Podcast on Facebook.